The morning after the incident in the conference room, Sarah didn't wake up feeling triumphant or righteous. Instead, she woke up feeling terrified. She lay next to Marcus in their queen-sized bed, listening to his steady breathing, and wondered if she'd just destroyed her career in 45 seconds of raw honesty. Marcus, of course, knew nothing about what had happened. Sarah hadn't told him yet. She'd come home late the previous evening after the board meeting had dissolved into awkward silence and multiple people trying to apologize to her privately. Derek had actually tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd been joking. But nobody had laughed at that explanation. She turned to look at her husband. Even in sleep, Marcus looked peaceful. His face was smooth, untroubled. There was no tension around his eyes like there was around hers. She thought about what Derek had said about janitors and their families, and she felt the anger rise again. Not at Derek, but at herself for ever letting his worldview affect her, even for a moment. Sarah carefully slipped out of bed and made her way downstairs. The house was quiet, wrapped in that special kind of silence that only exists in the early morning hours before the rest of the world wakes up. She started the coffee maker and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at their suburban street. The houses all looked similar in that way suburban houses do: two-story, manicured lawns, the American dream packaged neatly into mortgages and homeowner associations. But this house was different because of who lived in it, and Sarah was only just beginning to understand how much that mattered. The doorbell rang at 6:47 a.m., which was unusual. Sarah checked her phone. Several messages from colleagues asking if she was okay, if there was anything they could do, if she wanted to grab coffee and talk. She ignored them all and opened the front door to find Marcus's mother, Dorothy, standing on the porch with fresh bagels and a worried expression. "I saw the news," Dorothy said, pushing past Sarah with the kind of determined grace only a mother in her 70s could muster. "Well, not the news, not really. Linda Thompson called me. You know Linda, she works in accounting at the high school where Marcus is, and she heard from her cousin who works at your company that there was some kind of incident. She said you stood up for Marcus in front of your board. Is that true?" Dorothy set the bagels down on the kitchen counter and turned to face her daughter-in-law with her hands on her hips. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see right through you. She'd been a teacher for 40 years, and she had that quality about her, the ability to recognize truth and bullshit in equal measure. Sarah didn't see the point in lying. "Yes," she said simply. "But Dorothy, I don't know what's going to happen. I may have just ended my career." "Good," Dorothy said, pulling up a chair at the kitchen island. "Maybe now you can start living it." Sarah wanted to argue, but Dorothy was already talking, already moving, already making Sarah sit down and eat one of the bagels. "Do you know why Marcus became a janitor?" Dorothy asked. It wasn't really a question, just the opening to a story Sarah suddenly realized she'd never actually heard. "He's always told me it was a good, honest job," Sarah said carefully. "It was," Dorothy nodded. "But that's not why he chose it. When you two got married, you were both in consulting. You were both climbing. You were both so ambitious. And for the first 3 years, you were happy. Then you got pregnant with Emma. Do you remember that time?" Sarah did. She remembered being terrified, not about the baby, but about her career trajectory. She remembered taking calls from the hospital, remembered working from home for 2 weeks before going back to the office, remembered feeling like she was failing at everything. "Marcus came to me one day," Dorothy continued, "about a month before Emma was born. He said, 'Mom, I don't want our daughter to grow up wondering if her dad loves her. I see what Sarah's job is doing to her. I see her stress, and I love her too much to let her be the only one sacrificing.' He quit that job and took the custodial position at the high school. Everyone thought he was crazy. His father hadn't spoken to him for 2 years because of it. But you know what? Emma was born, and Marcus was there. He was there for every moment. And when Lucas came, he was there for those moments too." Sarah felt tears sliding down her face. She'd known Marcus had changed jobs before they'd had children, but she'd never known why. She'd assumed it was just a practical decision, a way to get better health insurance or more flexible hours. She'd never realized he'd done it intentionally, deliberately sacrificing his own ambitions so that she could pursue hers. "He did that for me," Sarah whispered. He did that for all of you, Dorothy corrected gently. And you've been so busy reaching for the top that you didn't even notice he was holding the foundation together. Marcus came downstairs 20 minutes later, still half asleep, his hair rumpled and his feet bare. When he saw his mother sitting at the kitchen island, he broke into a smile that transformed his entire face. He hugged Dorothy, kissed Sarah on the forehead without noticing her red eyes, and sat down to eat a bagel. "The kid's still sleeping?" he asked, looking between the two women. "Emma was up studying for a chemistry test," Sarah said. "I heard her alarm go off about 15 minutes ago." "Right," Marcus said, checking his phone. "I need to head to school early. There's a water pipe issue in the gymnasium that I want to assess before the volleyball team gets there for practice." It was such a mundane detail, such an ordinary thing to say. But to Sarah, in that moment, it felt profound. Marcus wasn't just fixing a water pipe. He was making sure the volleyball team could practice. He was solving problems. He was contributing in ways that Derek Vaughn clearly couldn't fathom. "Marcus, I need to tell you something," Sarah said. He looked up from his bagel, his expression shifting into concern. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. There was an incident at work yesterday, and you were involved, kind of." "Not involved, but," Sarah took a breath and started again. She told him what Derek had said. She told him how she'd stood up, how she'd told the room about him, how she'd basically blown up the meeting. When she finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over and took her hand. "You shouldn't have done that," he said gently. Sarah's heart dropped. She'd expected support, and instead, "Not because it wasn't brave," he continued, "but because you shouldn't need to defend me to anyone. I'm not ashamed of what I do. Some of those kids at the school, Sarah, their home lives are a mess. They come in with nothing, and I make sure they have a clean place to learn. I fix things. I solve problems. That matters. But more than that, I get to be here for our kids. I wouldn't trade this job for any CEO position in the world." He squeezed her hand. "But I'm worried about you. What happened at work? Are you in trouble?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I might have quit. I'm not entirely sure." Marcus exchanged a look with his mother, then stood up and wrapped his arms around Sarah from behind, kissing the top of her head. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said. "We always do." But Sarah knew that wasn't quite true. They hadn't been figuring things out together. She'd been climbing, and he'd been supporting, and somehow they'd drifted into a pattern where she was always reaching upward while he was always holding her up. She was only just beginning to understand how exhausting that must have been for him. At 8:15 a.m., Emma came downstairs in her school uniform, her hair in a messy bun, a textbook clutched to her chest. She looked at her mother and father and grandmother and seemed to sense the weight of something in the air. "Did something happen?" Emma asked, the way teenagers do when they've developed an almost supernatural ability to detect adult drama. "Your mother had a very important moment at work yesterday," Marcus said, glancing at Sarah. "She stood up for something she believed in." Emma's eyes widened. "Did you get fired?" "I don't know," Sarah said honestly. "But regardless, I want you to know something. I've been working so hard to build my career, to be successful, to set an example for you. But I think I've been setting the wrong example. Your father," Sarah paused, emotion catching in her throat again. "Your father has been showing you something more important than success. He's been showing you what it means to prioritize people. To be present. To matter not because of what you do, but because of who you are and how you treat others." Emma looked at her father, then back at her mother. "So are you going to be home more now?" she asked, with the practical concern of a teenager who'd learned not to get her hopes up. "I don't know," Sarah said. "But I'm going to try. That's a promise." The next few days unfolded in an unexpected way. Instead of receiving a termination letter, Sarah received a call from the board of directors. They wanted to meet with her privately. She went into the conference room, a smaller one this time, not the grand one with the mahogany table, with her resignation letter already prepared in her bag. But the board didn't fire her. Instead, they offered her something different. "We've been thinking about what you said," began Gerald Chen, the board's most senior member. "And we've realized that our company has a serious culture problem. People like Derek. They're the symptom, not the disease. The disease is that we've created an environment where someone can mock a hardworking parent, where we've equated job titles with human worth, where people are too afraid to speak up. We want to change that. So what are you asking? Sarah said cautiously. We're asking you to stay, Gerald said. But not just as CEO. We want you to lead a comprehensive culture initiative. We want you to rebuild how this company views success, how we treat people, how we measure worth. We'll give you complete control over this project, and we'll back you entirely. We believe in what you said. We just need help making it real. Sarah was shocked. What about Derek? He's no longer with the company, another board member said. His decision. He resigned yesterday. He got a job offer from a firm that better matches his values, if we're being generous about it. Sarah could have said yes immediately. She could have seen this as a vindication, proof that she'd been right. But instead, she asked for time to think about it. She went home and told Marcus what had happened, and together, they had a conversation that would reshape their entire marriage. They sat on the back patio, watching Lucas play in the grass while the evening light turned golden. Sarah told Marcus she was considering turning down the offer, at least temporarily. She said she wanted to take a sabbatical, 3 months to be present, to reconnect with the family, to figure out what success actually meant to her. But your career, Marcus said. He didn't say it as a warning, just as a gentle observation. We'll still be there, Sarah said. But Emma has 3 more years of high school. Lucas has 5 more years of elementary school. You've been holding our family together for 14 years, Marcus. Let me try that for a while. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, he said, but when you go back, I want you to go back as someone who understands what matters. Not as someone trying to prove something. I think I'm learning, Sarah said. That night, she called the board back. She told them she would take the job, but with one condition. She wanted to design a program that included a mandatory volunteer project for all executives. They would spend 1 week each year doing frontline work, cleaning, serving, mentoring. They would experience, firsthand, what it meant to do the work that made society function. The board agreed. It was radical, but after Derek's resignation, they seemed willing to be radical. Sarah took her 3-month sabbatical. During those months, she attended every school event, helped with homework, attended parent-teacher conferences, and learned her children again. She and Marcus went on a vacation, their first in 5 years that didn't involve her working on her laptop. They talked. They laughed. They remembered why they'd fallen in love in the first place. When Sarah returned to work, something fundamental had shifted in her. She was still driven, still ambitious, still brilliant at her job. But she was driven by something different now. She wasn't climbing anymore. She was building. And she was making sure that everyone in her company understood that the people who did the essential work, the cleaners, the custodians, the support staff, they weren't lesser than. They were equal. They were worthy. They were human beings with stories and families and dreams and sacrifices.